All right, for more concerning the ANC's 55th National Conference, let's hand over to Sakina Kamwendo, who's standing by with SABC News senior reporter Samkele Maseko. Sakina, a very good morning to you once again.
Well, good morning, Lebu, and welcome back, everybody, to Nasrec, south of Johannesburg, the 55th conference of the African National Congress. So the SABC out in full force, bringing you blow-by-blow coverage of this event. And if you haven't yet downloaded it, please do download our SABC Plus app, because that will give you access not only to the news channel, but also all the other channels on SABC, as well as radio, and you will be covered throughout the day. So if you haven't yet, do yourself a favor and get that particular app. So coming back to the business of the conference, I'm joined by Samkele Maseke now. And Samkele, of course, no surprises in terms of the late night antics. We kind of expected that it would run into the night. What is surprising, though, from our conversation yesterday is the fact that nothing much has changed in terms of where we started with the names that were up for nomination. We would have thought that given all the wrangling, all the horse trading, all the discussions and meetings into the night and early morning hours from the previous night and again yesterday, that perhaps there would be a streamlined nominations list, but that hasn't happened.
That has not happened. For instance, I had speaking to a few people, particularly on the Cyril Ramaphosa side, that has not consolidated their slate. But if you look at the Zweli Mkhize lineup, they've pretty much got a consolidated lineup. You've got Zweli Mkhize as president, Paul Mashatile as deputy, Phumulo Maswale as SG, Nomvula Mokonyane as first Deputy General Secretary, and Rolanda from the Western Cape as second Deputy General Secretary. The National Chairperson is Stanley Chupu Mathabata, whom there's a conundrum around Chupu and his province, with some regional chairpersons and regional secretaries now effectively saying that they are deflecting from the PEC position of moving away from Cyril Ramaphosa to Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Those regional leaders saying they are still sticking with Cyril Ramaphosa and not voting for Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Then as Treasurer General, you've got about 4 or 5 people available. You've got Pule Mabe, Kwendra Mahupa, Pechane Chauke, Pule Mabe, Mzwandile Masina. And it tells you that on the issue of slate politics, one perspective seems to have a consolidated slate. But those in line with ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, everybody sees them and fancies themselves as leadership. I've just spoken to Oscar Mabuyane now, saying that he at some point contemplated withdrawing for Ronald Lamula for the Deputy Presidency candidature. But those who support Oscar Mabuyane told him, no, you can't withdraw for Ronald Lamula. You're more senior than Ronald Lamula. Ronald Lamula needs to kowtow to you and look at another position in the top 6 or coming back as an NEC and NWC member. So essentially, on that perspective, they've not conformed to slate politics. But it also shows that the center within that perspective is not holding, and their president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is seemingly not having, I'll say it politely, the backbone to say, you step down, you come in as deputy president and have a clear lineup.
And, you know, that position is carried through in the various positions where you have more than 2 nominations. But let's just stick with the national chairperson position for a moment with Chupu Mathabata and Gwede Mantashe. Now there, Mathabata, as you say, very interesting, and what's happening with Limpopo. He would have been seen previously as aligned to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Has anything changed since, you know, coming to conference? Do you think that there's a possibility that that nomination is now aligned to the contender in Dr. Zweli Mkhize? And if so, what does that mean for Limpopo and its voting delegates? Are they likely to go with Dr. Mkhize?
What is transpiring with Stanley Chupu Mathabata, his relationship with the president has pretty much soured over the past few years, particularly when you look at the differences between those whom are accused of bankrupting VBS and looting VBS and those whom supported Soviet Lekhanyane in Limpopo. The Soviet Lekhanyane grouping is seen to be closer to President Ramaphosa on the linkage of the 3 doctors from the Sekhukhune region, Dr. Aaron Mutwaledi and Dr. Joe Phahla, whom are seen as enforcers of Cyril Ramaphosa in Limpopo. Then on the other hand, you've got Chupu Mathabata, who's very close to the likes of Danny Msiza, whom have been facing political difficulties and seen of being ostracized by those who support President Cyril Ramaphosa. Florence Radzelani, the deputy chairperson, yesterday speaking to the Limpopo delegation, saying that those whom are accommodating Limpopo are seemingly coming from the N3 towards KwaZulu-Natal in the form of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, and they are more aligned to going with people who are accommodating them, and those who support President Ramaphosa are not accommodating them, which forced a crack and a breakaway from Limpopo, with Pule Shayin leading the Norman Mashabane region, John Mpi leading Pitamukaba region, and also the Waterberg region, and also elements of Vembe through the regional chairperson, and also through the Skukune regional secretary Tala, who are told, they said that they are not in the know of this new decision by the PEC of Limpopo. I called Ruben Madaje, the provincial secretary of Limpopo, and asked him, what is Limpopo's position? We are told that your caucus of the province at conference has decided to call Dr. Zweli Mkhize. He simply said, those are lies, it's not true. He's currently sitting in the credentials committee meeting, which tells you of a deeper rooted divisions come the Limpopo conference voting delegation. The Eastern Cape as well is faced with a conundrum. Phumulo Masualle is in the Dr. Zweli Mkhize lineup. He's nominated, he's met threshold, he's on the ballot paper. We've got Oscar Mabuyana for deputy president, Oscar aligned to the president, Phumulo aligned to Dr. Zweli Mkhize. So in most instances, these bigger provinces are fractured and divided. And then it moves to the smaller provinces, your Western Cape, your Northern Cape, which seem to be united and moving as a bloc, which may ultimately be the kingmakers of this conference.
And nobody was looking at that. But then, of course, coming to the position of Secretary General, you speak about Phumulo Masualle. Again, you've got Fikile Mbalula and you've got Ndumiseni Ntuli. And they are both, again, seem to have been aligned to the President Cyril Ramaphosa faction. So, in failing to get one of them to step down, doesn't that strengthen Phumulo Masualle in that position?
It does strengthen Phumulo Masualle in that position because it means that the vote of the Secretary General in the so-called Cyril or Renewables Core is split between Fikile Mbalula and also Mtumiseni Ntuli. But also, the conundrum with that is that KwaZulu-Natal is not as united as many people think when it comes to the issue of Phumulo Masualle. There are those whom are seemingly were anti-Mtumiseni Ntuli in KwaZulu-Natal going to the provincial conference, whom have come around and coalesced around Mtumiseni Ntuli within this national conference of the ANC, whom are saying that Phumulo Masualle may not inspire confidence, but Mtumiseni Ntuli does. But they do not want Fikile Mbalula because Fikile Mbalula is seen to be aligned to a certain core or certain faction in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and they seemingly see him as not taking them seriously in the broader politics of the mass democratic movement and the ANC. So the issue of voting patterns in this conference, particularly from all provinces, is not as cast in stone as many people think it is, particularly on the position of SG, on the position of deputy president, because you've got those whom are saying, no, we vote Cyril or we'll vote Zweli Mkhize, but we don't support Paul Mashatile, we support Ronald Lamula, or we support Oscar Mabuyana. It's going to be a mixed bag of results by the looks of things, particularly knowing that there have been no clear nominations from other provinces, because you'd find that in Limpopo, for example, they've not nominated Phumulo Masualle for Secretary General. They've nominated him to Mtumiseni Ntuli. In Gauteng, they've not nominated Phumulo Masualle. They've nominated him to Mtumiseni Ntuli. Eastern Cape, as SG, they've nominated Mtumiseni Ntuli and not Fikile Mbalula, who seem to be closer to the president and closer to the CR faction. The Oscar Mabuyana court decided to go on Mtumiseni Ntuli. The Western Cape, they've nominated Cyril for president, but have chosen Mtumiseni Ntuli for Secretary General. In the Free State, it's vice versa as well. They have chosen Cyril as the president, but chosen Fikile Mbalula as the Secretary General. So it's going to be an interesting voting pattern, and especially on the head counts. Where do people go on head counts? If you as a province have nominated, for example, Limpopo, you've nominated Paul Mashatile as deputy president, but you've nominated Mtumiseni Ntuli for Secretary General. When Mtumiseni Ntuli has his head count, where do you go? Are the head counts going to be split? This core aligned to Paul Mashatile has its head count at 10 o'clock. Mtumiseni Ntuli has its head count at 12 o'clock. So it tells you that slate politics, to a relative extent, has been demolished to this conference. But ultimately, with the voting taking place and provinces persuading one another, they may still want to stick to the slate politics type of voting, or they may decide to say, no, President, we vote for Zweli or Cyril, DP, we vote for Paul Mashatile, or vice versa. It's going to be interesting on how the coordination of the voting of the various positions now goes forward. Will it be slate-based, or will every individual be consolidating their head count alone?
So as things stand and coming into conference and by the look of things still to be the case, it would seem that Cyril Ramaphosa is odds-on favorite at this point to get a second term. But of course, as you say, things are very fluid. Anything can happen, especially given that, the voting delegates don't seem to be as united in terms of bringing blocks of votes as provinces to conference. But when it comes to the deputy president's nominations, so you've got Paul Mashatile, and I want to, talk about Paul Mashatile for a moment, because Ronald Lamula, Oscar Mabuyane, very clear that would be for the incumbent Cyril Ramaphosa. Where does Paul Mashatile stand? Is this a case of three candidates that are all aligned to Cyril Ramaphosa? The two, as I say, much clearer, but where does Paul Mashatile stand?
In 2017, Paul Mashatile was part of those whom were at some point considering Zweli Mkhize as president alongside David Mabuza in Mpumalanga in that unity nomination as a third way in the conference. It's not clear where to find Dr. Zweli Mkhize, to find Paul Mashatile in these broader politics. But what we've come to know in the PGC of Gauteng was very critical of the incumbent, saying that there's a lack of leadership in the country. There's task teams all over the show. There's commissions all over the show. There's no decisive decision being taken, saying that there's been a failure to fire a failing Group Chief Executive Officer of Power Utility Eskom. It's taken the government 2 years to fire Henry Tereta, who has seemingly failed as the Group CEO of Eskom when it comes to energy generation within the country. So Paul Mashatile is very critical of the president, but also he's playing his cards very close to his chest. He's been nominated by provinces that support Dr. Zweli Mkhize in the form that he's got a number of nominations from KwaZulu-Natal, got a number of nominations in Limpopo as the deputy president, got nominations as well in the Free State province and the Northwest province through Nono Moloi, who is the provincial chairperson of the Northern Cape and who is a former perceived ally of President Ramaphosa. So Paul Mashatile is an important power broker within the ANC. He could ultimately become the deputy president should the voting patterns in the way that he's been nominated come through to fruition as they are. But what is clear is that in the Eastern Cape, the Oscar Mabuyane faction has got an axe to grind with Paul Mashatile. But the Babalo Matikizela faction in the Eastern Cape is with Paul Mashatile. In the Free State, you are seeing that the Paseka Nompondo faction is with Paul Mashatile, but the Mxolisi Tukwana faction is not with Paul Mashatile. So it's a very fluid situation. But what is clear is that he is not seemingly trusted by those who support ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. But those who support Dr. Zweli Mkhize as well, at some point did not trust Paul Mashatile because his province, Gauteng, did not nominate Dr. Zweli Mkhize, which prompted the 5 regional secretaries in KwaZulu-Natal and chairpersons to say that they're not married to the idea of Paul Mashatile. They're just married to the idea of Dr. Zweli Mkhize as president of the ANC, which also places a conundrum. There are northern regions of KwaZulu-Natal, particularly, I'm not going to mention regions by name, but with the discussions that have been taking place and with the people that we've been going to, they are saying that we are not married to the combo of Zweli Mkhize and Phumulo Moswale. We are supporting Zweli, but we're not supporting Phumulo. Hence, I'm saying that it's not cast in stone to say who will be president, who will be SG, who will be this, and that, but it will ultimately boil down to when the delegates go to the voting booth to vote on how they vote on the particular outcomes, because there's no clear slate in this conference apart from that of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, which seems to have a consolidated view of their 7 people to occupy the now top 7.
Well, it's going to be interesting. It will now be a top 7, you heard correctly, as opposed to a previous top 6 with the constitutional amendment effected last night here at the conference. But of course, a few more positions that we need to run through. And when we come back to Nasrec, Samkele and I will look at those as well. Very interestingly, Also the question of women representation and how that is supposed to be brought in with the additional position in the top 6 that is now a top 7. We'll talk about all of that, and of course the Treasurer General's position, which is almost a shopping list of candidates vying for that position. So we'll have more for you here from Nasrec when we come back. But for now, let's take a break.